Purify your heart. Know you will be loved. Assalamu alaikum. As the school year gets on its way, many children are struggling, not because they feel overwhelmed, distracted, or emotionally, dysregulated. Well, assalamu alaikum. Good evening and welcome to School Matters on Radio Al Ansar 90.4 FM in Durban and 105.6 FM in Pietermaritzburg. Yes, I'm your host, your producer, Sumaya Khan. Tonight's topic, it was back by demand. Educators and parents said, Sumaya, bring that guest back. We want to hear more because we could relate. And, we were speaking about what the educators are going through, especially parents and the learners. What are their children going through with the barriers? While tonight's topic is learning, begins before the bell rings, supporting children's emotional and communication foundations for school success. One wouldn't say that this is so important. We're always focusing on homework and healthy lunch and literacy. But are we supporting children emotional and communication foundations for school success? Well, this evening, we're joined by Raisa Sheikh, a speech language pathologist, who works closely with children's families and schools. She focuses on the everyday skills that support learning, listening, communication, emotion, and awareness and social connection. Where was she when we were in school? I know lots of moms are saying that. Well, Raisa will be sharing practical, relatable insights to help parents and teachers understand what children really need in order to feel calmer, more focused, and ready to learn, even before the bell rings. Learning begins before the bell rings, supporting children's emotional needs. It's so important. It's absolutely vital. And communication is the foundation for school success. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for such a warm welcome. I'm happy to be back.
Zach, I'm not just saying this. Can you feel a positivity? Loving the vibe, loving the vibe, especially right now for all the tired parents and educators are listening to you. And the child is hoping, I hope our parents continue listening to School Matters so we don't need to do our schoolwork and we can go to bed a bit late. So has it been the beginning of the year for you?
Alhamdulillah, it's been a wonderful start. I think the kids are really excited to be back into structure. I can see whenever I see my kids, they're like giving me big hugs and we missed you. And I'm like, really? You missed me? Yes, we missed you so much. So awesome.
Yeah. And you've probably been quite busy,
Yes.
as you also go to, practice on your own and in schools. I really don't know how you do it. I always say, I like now, just before we could come in studio, how was that storm?
It was quite intense. I hope everybody who's on the road is driving really safely.
Well, inshallah, there have been floods around parts of South Africa. That's why we say we never know. We must always remember the Almighty and make a little small dua before we leave home, because anything can happen. Anything can happen. Yesterday, last week's show was so different. All my guests are superb, but there's something you did to, I know a lot of my colleagues and even parents were saying, like, who are listening, and they said, you know what? So many nails she touched. She was thinking what I was thinking, and that's so true. So whatever you're doing it in a right way. You're doing it in a definitely right way. We focus so much, as as educators and parents, academically. We focus on nutrition. We focus on the way they speak, on their manners. We focus on barriers. But do we really focus on the emotional needs? Because I know a couple of years ago, I think maybe 3 years ago, when I did an ECD seminar here at Al Ansar, there were parents and educators who spoke where they tell a parent that their child is not emotionally ready to go into grade 1. Their child is not emotionally ready to go into grade R, from double R. And parents think, here's this teacher failing my child. I mean, I'm a doctor and my husband's an accountant and we are academics and all of that. But they don't understand. And you kind of explained it, because it's not that the child is dumb, but it's just that they haven't reached certain emotional milestones. And
100%. So what we're looking at when we look at learning in the early years is really how we're getting our children ready for the learning that's going to be happening lifelong. So it's not just what's happening in the classroom. A lot of the learning actually happens incidentally on a car ride to school, at the grocery store, on the soccer field. But that learning can only happen if we have adults who are really present and aware, tuned in, and know how to kind of guide that, facilitate that learning. So that's what we're here to speak about today, is that it's not just about the worksheets and textbooks that come home, especially in the very early years. It's about connection, it's about intention, it's about emotional regulation. And oftentimes, as adults, we assume that kids know this or should know it. And we often judge or shout or get upset when our kids show us that they're not coping emotionally, if they have meltdowns or tantrums, or they're not coping well academically at school. But we've kind of missed that step of fostering good emotional regulation and good communication skills so that before they even learn to read and write, they're ready to learn.
Exactly. And now with technology, I mean, it's a good thing, but it's also made them lack that empathy, that fine motor skill. What I mean is like they can't relate to a human being sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. And we've seen that even with COVID, there's been a lot of fear around social interaction and large gatherings, and families visit less. And so what's happening is that a lot of the skills that we would have learned as kids by visiting our family, by interacting with friends, by going outside into the playground, our kids are missing that. Contrast that with the amount of time they're spending on screens. It is no wonder that we have so many more kids who are needing extra services because they simply haven't developed what would typically develop on the playground or in the home environment.
Exactly. You know, Raisa, at the start of the school year, what are you seeing most often in children right now?
Okay, so that's a really good question. Let's look at it. So some of my kids are coming in really dysregulated. So it's a big word. Don't let it intimidate you. Basically, what this means is they come to school and they're tired, or say, for example, I'll take you through a typical routine, and a lot of our parents who are listening will relate to this. So your child may have slept late, or they may have gone to bed on time but had poor sleep. So they woke up a few times, or it was a light sleep, or they woke up really early and didn't get enough time. So the sleep wasn't great. Then in the morning, maybe they're slow to get dressed. And now you're shouting, "We're getting late. Where are your shoes?" They have one shoe on, the other shoe is in another room. So now you're getting stressed because it's like, if we don't leave by 7, we're going to get stuck in traffic and you're going to be late, and it's the first week of school. And so you're kind of trying to get them to get ready on time, but you're also flustered and frustrated and anxious in that moment because you know you have certain things to do. So that child now rushes through, maybe skips breakfast or grabs something quickly, but has all of this like anxiety about getting ready and getting out of the house. And now they come to school and there's bright lights, there's often fluorescent lighting, loud, kids are speaking. Classrooms can get pretty loud. And they're expected to suddenly just flip a switch and start learning. And that's not actually how our bodies work.
You know, while you're talking, a message came through. Tell Raisa, she just got to change some words. Instead of the child, put the teacher there, because teachers experience that. They rush to work and the classroom is a staff room. Well, humans, end of the day. True.
True. To our listener who said that, I agree with you 100%. This is a human experience. Although we're speaking about kids now, it relates to teenagers and adults as well. So what we're going to speak about then is, how do we overcome this? So we know the challenges. We know that everybody is really busy. We know that mornings are really hectic. We know that kids have too much of screen time. We know that classrooms are really big. We know that it's really hot and there's no air cons and fans. But how do we, looking at all of those barriers...
And no support too. Just wanted to add to the list.
Yes, that list can go on infinitely. But how do we now, with all of these challenges, still have a successful academic year? But more importantly, I'm not just looking at learning outcomes. I'm looking at, how do we raise this child to be well developed and well grounded, so that when they're a teenager and when they're an adult, they actually make a meaningful contribution to this world.
I love what you just said there, because a lot of parents don't think about it. Parents are also selfish. You know, I just want my child to be successful. When I mean successful, teacher, doctor, lawyer, accountant, own a big house, a big car, gold mine. I'm being sarcastic now. But they don't really see, what contribution can my child do to society? Will my child help the neighbor who can't even walk properly, maybe a pension. I'm just giving an example. Or it's about myself and I and just taking over, smashing heads to move on. Someone said what you just said now and what I just said, but that's how society is going.
So I agree.
Yeah.
It is a very fast-paced world that we
Yeah.
live in. And that actually filters down to our children. But what happens is at a very young age, so when our kids are in grade R, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, parents actually need to go through this self-reflection and awareness. And I advise, so when I do parent workshops and parent training, teacher workshops, this is what I advise my parents and teachers to do. When you start the day with an intention. So it could be like, speak to Allah, you could be like, Ya Allah, please help me to be more present and connected to my child today. Please help me to not get frustrated when my child can't find his shoe. Please help me to make good memories. The intention is important because you might go through your day and not achieve that. But you try again tomorrow, and tomorrow you might be more aware of your own emotions that are impacting your child's development. So, what happens when parents start becoming aware, setting that intention, connecting meaningfully, pausing, being patient with their children when there's moments of frustration, then these children tend to emulate those same qualities.
Exactly.
So, if we see teenagers who are selfish, we have to then look at parents and be like, okay, what happened here that I'm now looking at this child who doesn't think about others? And I know it's a hard one. I know parents are not going to want to hear this, but it is something we have to sit with.
Do you know, a message came through now on my phone. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. No, but you're right what you're saying. We're not picking on anyone, but we are the first adults, the adult where the child has the most interaction with, and they sponge off us, so they tend to imitate us. Like a child who swears when they're very little and everyone finds it's so cute and it's so nice, but the child grows up into a little monster. I'd say a big monster, and it's almost so cute and adorable. It comes across as terrible, as parents haven't taught them respect. You often say learning begins before a child opens a book. What does that look like in real life?
Okay. So before a child learns to read and write, they are learning from their environment. And this looks like listening, so it's auditory processing skills, and it looks like emotional regulation and connection and curiosity with the adults in their world and with their peers.
Yeah.
So peer interaction is really important. So when we look at this, let's say a child who is 4 years old, if you take them to the grocery store, how about you make up a little list that, okay, my son, these are the 3 things that I need from the store today. And it shouldn't be things like sweets and chips and cold drinks. It should be things that you're actually going to use to cook your meal. So I need tomatoes, I need 3 onions, I need 1 head of lettuce. Your child is now learning to contribute meaningfully to the meal, to your family, to count, to identify what vegetables are needed, to be responsible for that. And then when you're in the store, you could even do things like, oh, lettuce starts with a l sound. Do you hear that? Can you find another vegetable that starts with a l sound? Now, for parents who are thinking, oh, who has the time to do this? Sure, that's a choice that we make. I'm not saying do it all the time, but how about once a week? How about once a week you intentionally go to the grocery store with your little one, give them a list, teach them to count money, to work out change, to learn vocabulary, to ask for help. These are the social skills that we're missing. When a child goes to a store, even a very little child, you could give them the script. If you can't find the lettuce on the shelf, how about you go and ask the worker who's wearing a vest to show you where the lettuce is? Do you know how meaningful that is for the child's long-term learning?
And how they ask, they approach, their manner.
Politeness. And so children who are now, and then when you're done at the store, you could come home and be like, oh, could you tell dad what you did at the store? Now you're doing working memory, auditory recall, narrative discourse, listening comprehension, conversational exchanges. All of these skills that I teach directly in a session can be done incidentally just on a trip to the grocery store.
That's so true. When you think about it, like send them in to get a loaf of bread. And at the same time, you're actually making them wise because, like, they'll only go in if there's something in it for them. And that's how children are like, I don't want to go visit this person because of what I'm going to get.
Yeah.
I'm going to get bored. I don't have my phone. I don't have my iPad. But if they know they're going in and they have to think, they got to remember stuff. All right. So, from a speech and language perspective, what are the hidden skills children need to cope in a classroom?
Okay, so especially when we look at mainstream learning, there's things like independence, so being able to take care of the items that belong to you. There's things like emotional regulation, so being able to identify how you're feeling and manage that independently or with a little bit of assistance. Then there's things like our listening skills. So, can I follow a multi step instruction? So, if I say, children, you're going to take your bags out, take this textbook, turn to page 5, and then get your pens. That's a really loaded instruction. And often children seem like they're not paying attention. They're defiant even, but it's simply because they haven't understood the instruction or the words that were used. So all of these are hidden skills that we don't realize our children need. But when we start targeting it, when parents start working on it at home, we see that our children then go to school ready to learn.
Exactly. And that confidence, because sometimes, like, I know, like, I had an experience, when was it, yesterday? A parent came in to give something to a child, and parents' opinion of child is completely different to me and the rest of the classmates. Child doesn't smile. Child looks always angry. Child, when no one's looking, is tend to be aggressive to everybody else. But mom came in and, no, he's such a sweet child. He's very shy, and like, you think, like, how do we tell the parent, no, it's a completely different person in the classroom? Unfortunately, no parent wants to hear anything. We're not saying that's negative, but no parent wants to hear a different story or an image of their child.
So, Sumaya, with this, I see this so often. I do parent interviews and I do teacher interviews. And I promise you, sometimes you wonder, do I have the child's name right? Are we speaking about the same child? And I'll this is the child we're speaking about because this is the parent interview that I got. And it's not to say that one person is right or one person is wrong. It is about the demand that's placed on the child. And oftentimes parents are at a disadvantage because academic demands are not placed at home. They're not required to sit and listen for a long time, to produce work, to stick worksheets in their book, to exist with other children in their space. They're used to always being heard. So the demand is different. So if we come from a place of interest, witnessing, curiosity, both as parents and teachers, we can then actually very easily work together to be like, I love that he is so well regulated at home. Like, this is amazing because now I know his potential. How do we replicate that in the classroom? What's going on in the classroom that's making this child just completely melt down or act out or behave poorly? Often when we ask these questions, we're then able to support the child to learn the skills necessary to function in that space.
And as educators, again, and I'm saying this, I know a lot of colleagues might fight with me, we are so busy pushing curriculum, even in primary school, even in foundation, especially if you're looking at educators in a government sector or even in a normal private school, but generally I'm focusing on a government sector. You got like 60 to 50, some schools even 65, grade ones. Grade ones are still babies. When you're looking at like they 6 years, 7 years, and you have no time to deal with any emotions. You're worried about your books being set and worried about them learning, reading. And we tend to overlook that because we're worried if we're going to focus too much of time trying to figure out what is, just say, Lungelo's problem or Fatima's problem. And then what about the rest of the 58 learners? It's a whole lot.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. You raise a very good point. I'm going to give you an easy bridge to that. And I have worked with many teachers who have given me fantastic feedback just based on the simple 5-minute exercise. Okay. So when we speak, and this is a whole other topic about the school system, the curriculum, and how it's set up in the classroom, we know that it's not well thought of or planned. And we know that it really sometimes does harm both to the teacher's mental health and to the children's performance. So, that is an issue. But being aware of that, is one aspect. The thing that I find really helps our children is you have 60 kids in your class. It's really hot. You've come in, you need to do math. Nobody's listening. They're all chatting. Some kids are at the bin. Some kids need to go to the toilet, even though they just came in from break time. So there's a lot of things that are happening that are not conducive to learning. What do we do in those moments? As the teacher, as a parent, as an adult in a child's space, you offer your calm and your regulation and your flexibility in thinking to the child. Now, how do we do that? Simply, at the start of the lesson, you get the children's attention. So usually some of my teachers like to use these little songs or chants or clapping that gets the child's attention.
Definitely, I have to start watching TikTok and knowing what's the trend,
Yes.
especially in senior primary.
There's a lot of fun things going
In high
around,
school.
right?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of connection and fun there, right? So you get the children's attention, and then you do breathing.
Yeah.
So we're all going to do 5 deep breaths together. You can have star breathing or box breathing, whatever you want to use in your classroom. So there's a visual. And then after that, you ask the children to, let's focus on our heart. Place your hand on your heart. How does it feel? Is it racing? Does it feel really fast? Okay, now we're going to breathe into our heart space. And imagine this really bright light coming from your heart, radiating out to your hands and to your toes and to the top of your head. And so if you're in an Islamic school, you might want to say, imagine Allah's light, Ya Noor, coming out from your heart. You might want to start with Bismillah. But if you're not in an Islamic school, this works too. And it works really well because you're using visualization and imagery to ground and center your children together with they call it polyvagal strategies. So once you get into your heart space and you put your hand on your heart and you've done your deep breathing, then you say, okay, now we're going to hum for 1 minute, and you might want to put a timer on. And humming alone has shown to regulate our bodies for both adults and children to a point where it's actually observable via objective testing.
Well, sorry, Raisa, Zach, I know you're thinking it. We should start doing this in Al-Ansar team building for all the presenters and staff. Alhamdulillah. Positivity. No, but then even what you're saying is also like adults can also do this.
Oh, yes. And the thing is, it builds an atmosphere of love.
Yeah.
And when you have an atmosphere of love, it
warmth.
Doesn't matter if there's 60 kids in the class. They're going to be tuned into your frequency and learning is going to be so much easier.
So on that note, there doesn't mean if everyone is different, the job will still get done. Zach is saying that I need to give you headphones and a mic. You can contribute. But that's so true what you're saying. Think about it, zikr.
Exactly. It is zikr. It is zikr. And you might want to say things like, and even if you're just reading for yourself, you want to say, Ya Salam.
Yeah.
If you're impatient, you're going to do Ya Sabur, Ya Latif. If you want love in your classroom because all the kids are fighting, you want to do Ya Wujud. Anything that comes to your heart is remembrance, is zikr, and essentially you're teaching your kids a life skill that cannot be measured in your data sheet or in your progress report or at the end of the year. This they're going to remember throughout their life because it is a skill that we all need.
Exactly. Do you know, can you share a real example of a child who is labeled difficult or unfocused? Those are kind words. When something deeper is actually going on.
My sweet boy. Okay, there is a child who, today I had this incident. So absolutely loving, kind, caring little boy, grade 1. I've been working with him for a few years now, and he started big school. From grade R to grade 1, it's big school. He started big school, and he does struggle a little bit with transitions and perfection. So he wants to get everything absolutely perfectly right the first time. If he does not get it right the first time, it is a meltdown. Like he goes into overwhelm. So it was break time, and the teacher said to the students, please get your water bottles and your hats because it's really hot outside and we're going to go to the playground. Don't you know it? This little boy pushed the desk, stood up from his chair, pushed the desk, and was absolutely upset, speaking really loudly, crying, rocking back and forth. And the teacher was stunned. What happened? I just said, get your hats and your bottles. Why is this child having a meltdown? Now, if we label that child as difficult, we're missing something very important. What caused the meltdown?
Yeah.
So there are certain strategies that you can use to regulate the child. So when the child is in this meltdown moment, you're not going to say, oh, why are you feeling this way? Why are you shouting? Don't shout. Actually, their language center kind of gets hijacked by their emotional center in the brain. So what you want to do is, like you're doing right now with me, you're smiling comfortingly.
But you're smiling back at me. And when you look at adults, right, Zach, say it. Come on, you can ask questions, right? So I'll repeat it so the listeners can hear. Generally when adults smile to another adult and they be sarcastic or like they don't smile and they say, look at her, she's not a weakling. She's smiling at me. She's sucking up to me. But they don't realize no, it's not that dead.
There's a deeper connection and a biological advantage. And when we do it with love, that too can be zikr.
Exactly. As you get older, you reach different milestones as you get older and you realize, shame, I actually pity that person. And choose your choose it.
So maybe when they were kids, they didn't have the opportunity to learn this. So
we learned it in I won't say old age or dynamic. We learned it a little bit bigger. We learned it. No, but generally.
So what you would do then, Sumaya, in this situation, you smile. You breathe, because even though you're not telling the child you need to breathe, you're breathing and they're going to see your deep breathing and try to copy the same. And then you're like, oh, can I give you a hug? Or do you want to give yourself a bear hug? Because deep pressure is really comforting. Would you like to go outside? And then after 5 minutes, when that emotion kind of has run its course and subsided, then you bring the language in. I noticed that you stood up and you pushed the desk. Do you think that was the best thing to do? So you're not telling the child, I didn't like asking. That. Do you think that was the best thing to do? And 10 out of 10 times the child will say no. And then you're like, oh, what could you have done differently? Now you're not judging the child.
Patience, alhamdulillah. I just love, no, I'm being dead serious. It's like, you have so much of patience and I wish you rub off onto everyone. Like, we know there's an easy way. We know we can I won't say 100% fix it, but we know how to bring out the positivity, but we are like, but why you did it now? You can't do that there. You're getting a letter and blah, blah, blah. Educators do that. Parents do that.
So Allah is Rahman and Rahim. Allah is the source of mercy, the one who acts with mercy. If every day the only thing you do is Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, that's your intention at the start of the day, Ya Allah, let me help me to act with mercy, you will see it filter out into these interactions. So with this child, what do you think you could have done differently? And then we got to, oh, he doesn't have his hat.
Yeah.
Because his mom didn't pack his hat in his bag, it's not even his fault. He's in grade 1. Because he knew he didn't have a hat, he was so upset that now he didn't know what to do. So oftentimes when kids act out, there is something deeper going on. And if we help them to first regulate themselves, find calm, and then speak it through, we help them to set a model for how to deal with failure in the future. And that is important.
Exactly. But right now, I know everyone's listening, parents, educators, just that auntie who's listening always, you'll be amazed every single time when I attend something, I'll meet someone who doesn't have children in school, don't even have grandchildren in school, who are so mature. They're like probably in their 70s, 80s. That's time we're listening to school matches and we learn something. I'll say, Alhamdulillah, we're servicing everyone. And I know right now after this evening show, definitely I'm going to have people messaging me. Parents worry about math and academics, especially maths. What should they really be nurturing at home instead?
Okay. So if we look at young children, play, connection and interaction and play is their learning. So if you have a child who's on an iPad or a screen at all times, then they are not interacting with the world around them. So you need to get your children to interact. And it doesn't have to be just play in the traditional sense where they have toys. You could get them involved in chores in the house. There are studies that show children who are involved from a very young age, as young as 1 year old, in cleaning, sweeping, mopping, doing dishes.
Can I just say this on air? Naima Kala, my sister. That's my sister for real. My daughter is the only granddaughter. It's not slavery, and I'm not spoiling.
No.
I'm not, what's the word, ill-treating her niece.
It's not child abuse.
It's not child abuse. No, it's not child abuse because the culture today, if you ask the child to do something, it's child abuse. Generally, I know slime. Children love making slime, stealing all the mazina, cornstarch, doing this stuff, foam and shampoo. Clean up after your mess. Doesn't mean if we have helpers and people to assist us,
Of
don't do it.
course, of
Exact-
course. And they're learning
Raisa,
problem
we got our
solving.
boat.
They're learning problem solving.
With all your siblings.
They're
Yeah.
learning problem solving. They're learning to be part of a community. Because sometimes, and I know I'm guilty of
Yeah.
this, when I drive on the road, oh my goodness, I get so frustrated at some motorists because there's so much of like impatience, inconsideration, reckless driving. But honestly, it is a personality type. It is someone who is not thinking, who's rushing through life.
Yeah.
So when kids are younger, before they even learn math at school, they need to learn how to do life.
You're saying that this is a topic I touch like so often. At one point, everyone was going to China to do teaching and Saudi, but forget that. I'm talking about China. I had, it was some organization who came on board. And when we were talking about it and harsh reality, we have these children who actually academics, brilliant, 5 A's, 6 A's, had meltdowns because for the first time they had to wash their own clothes. They had to buy their own groceries. They had to clean. If they took a pair of socks and left it there, they discovered it was still there. And we actually interviewed from China how they managed and how some of them came back down to South Africa, where parents came with them in studio and said, because they did every single thing for their child and they mollycoddled and they killed their child with love to such a point when these young adults from 18, 19, 20 couldn't cope away from home because there was no one to do anything else. Parents were not there, helpers were not there. So what you're saying is so true. Absolutely true.
And when we have these life skills, it filters out into our learning.
Exactly.
People who are successful academically are not just successful academically if they've had this core training, they become successful at life. So when life changes, when there's an epidemic, when there's trauma, when there's death in the family, they don't crumble under the pressure because they have that sense of knowing how to deal with different situations.
Loving this. I think we should start our own series, Zach, on for all the psychologists out there. He said it, our own podcast. Well, we'll be taking a short ad break.
You are listening to School Matters with Sumaya Khan.
Canute de Nazila is proudly brought to you by Nona's Italian Kitchen, Strata Street Food, and the Magnum Capino Treat Store. Oh Allah, guide me and grant me well-being with those whom you have granted well-being.
اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا شر ما قضيت فإنك تقضي ولا يقضى عليك وإنه لا يذل من واليت ولا يعز من عاديت تباركت ربنا وتعاليت.
Canute de Nazila is proudly brought to you by Nona's Italian Kitchen, Strata Street Food, and the Magnum Capino Treat Store. Oh Allah, guide me and grant me well-being with those whom you have granted well-being.
Ciao, amici. Welcome to Nonna's Italian Kitchen. Here, you enter my Nonna Maria's warm embrace. Each dish crafted with love. Fresh herbs, homemade pizza and pasta. It's a family tradition. Come taste our pizza and pastas, made with the finest Italian tomatoes, stone ground flour, and local freshness. Mange. Celebrate life and family around the table with a taste of Italy at Gateway Mhlanga, Flora Road, Durban, and Nelson Mandela Square, Gauteng. Vi aspetto. I'll be waiting for you.
The chaos and destruction in the Gaza Strip is beyond comprehension. Virtually everyone is displaced, hungry, and in urgent need of life-saving humanitarian support. The Al-Imdad Foundation has been working tirelessly to address the health, nutrition, and water needs of the population. Our hospital, water deliveries, and hot meal programs are made possible with your support. Your donation, big or small, is a lifeline for those in dire need. Help Gaza survive. Donate online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
You are listening to School Matters with Sumaya Khan.
Assalamu alaikum. Yes, welcome back to School Matters. This evening we have a topic that we can go on and on. Learning begins before the bell rings, supporting children's emotional and communication foundations for school success. You know, in the studio is our guest Raisa Sheikh, a speech and language pathologist who works closely with children, their families and children and schools. She focuses on the everyday skills that support learning, listening, communication, emotional awareness, and social connection. You know, I don't know where she was hiding. I don't know under which rock, Zach, she was hiding, because like you brought this whole rainbow and light, and everyone. I mean, such alhamdulillah positive comments. Like, you know, listening. Parents, educators, and learners are learning new stuff. And what you're saying is like so relevant. It's the way we treat children. And what I've learned right now with you is my nickname at home is called Russia. Seriously, my nickname at home is because I'm always rushing, like, you know, that we're too busy, even educators and parents, to take that time to ask. We just want to shout and get the job done and over and get it done. And this makes such a big difference when it comes to you know, emotionally, on how we deal with the children, especially at school, and even parents. How do we deal with children? You know, it's not always so easy. You know, how do communication skills and emotional awareness influence behavior in young children?
Okay. So when we have, the thing is, it's so difficult because when children go through emotions, they need to have the language to communicate how they're feeling. But the language center of the brain literally gets hijacked and takes a back seat when a child is emotional. So what do? How do we get a child to not react with anger, frustration, by hitting, pushing, kicking, or by just defiance? Because in our older children, you might tell them, do your homework now, and they just ignore you. Or you tell them,
Doing it now, coming.
yeah, or they, you know, they just, okay, and they carry on. So how do we get children to check in with their emotions? So here's the thing. For very young children, we have to offer support in a very physical way. So we have to show up physically for this child. So if a child is being overwhelmed, you want to first do things like we spoke about, deep pressure, so hugs, squeezes, if that's what they want. Do you want to go outside? Let's look at the trees and the birds. Let's take a deep breath. Or sometimes you might be in a car driving and this child is just having a meltdown. You can be like, I see that you're really frustrated.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a minute or two. Take the time you need. Remember your breathing. Remember your humming. Do some zikr. You can also pray for the child, you know. And then you can be like, when you're ready, you can tell me what's got you so upset or how I can help you. So say, for example, you have two siblings sitting in the back seat fighting because they can't agree on something. Now, as the mom driving, you might be like, stop fighting, you know, but you're actually adding to the high energy and the intensity of that emotion. So what you really want to do is use a calm voice, smile, you know. And you will know this from radio, even if there were no cameras, when you smile, that energy carries through and listeners feel the warmth and the love of your smile through your voice.
Wow, Zach, we can do how many shows with Raisa?
So,
No, but what you're saying is true.
Yeah, a parent who just gives their calm, you loan your calm to your child. So smile, breathe, talk in a calm voice, even if you're really frustrated inside, go low. That child is going to start regulating. And then when they get to a point where you can actually have a conversation about it, you want to speak about emotions. So sometimes we use social stories, which are basically books, or we use charts where we have, you would know this from the classroom. You have your angry face, which is red, and then yellow, orange, green, or blue, depending on what scale you're using. And you kind of teach kids, oh, where do you think you are in this chart? And what can we do to get you to green? That's for a young child. For an older child or a teenager, you really want to engage their self-coping strategies. So you want to be like, okay, I know you don't agree with your sibling right now. You don't like what I said, but you know, sometimes you kind of just have to say, well, I know you don't like what I said, but this is what's necessary for this outcome. Or I know you don't like what I said. Talk to me. What would you prefer to do? So you engage with them, because children who are just controlled and shouted at and judged and told what to do, they don't grow up with skills to manage their emotions. And so
True.
while they might be really smart, in the workplace, there's a lot of conflict. They find that they're a little bit isolated, withdrawn, because those emotional skills were never taught.
Exactly. Tell me, what are 2 or 3 simple everyday things parents or teachers can start doing immediately to support learning and behavior?
Okay,
Magic wand?
it's a magic wand. So remember your breathing, your humming, your regulation, your heart connection, Uzu and Bismillah. So those are your prerequisites for everything, right? But beyond that, and this one is going to surprise listeners because I am a speech and language pathologist, but the first thing I say is say less. When a child is feeling intense emotions, you want to get through with the fewest words possible because that's going to make the biggest impact.
Yeah.
So instead of saying, why do you always do this? Why do you always fight with your sibling? Where are your shoes? We're getting late. How about you get down to their level, make eye contact, smile, breathe. Shoes. Can we find shoes? Now. So do you know how that grabs a child's attention? I do it regularly.
Teacher, look.
I do it regularly.
Yeah.
And what you're doing basically is you're lowering the linguistic load. So the fewer words you use, the easier it is for the child to follow what's happening in the moment and come out of the emotion. The second thing is you want to pause when you give an instruction or when you say something, because sometimes, and as adults, we have very efficient speech and language systems. So we speak and speak and speak. And especially if we're moms, we have lots to say.
In one breath.
In one breath. But what happens with a high rate of speech is that children actually stop processing and they don't have time to respond. And it's kind of an overwhelm cognitively. So you want to slow down. So you're saying, shoes, now, pause.
Yeah.
Let the child process what you've said and then respond. So don't be like, shoes now, where are your shoes? I told you to put your shoes on. That's too much. That's too much.
Well, a message came through on my cell phone. This is Fatima Kaka. Sumaya, how much does Raisa charges to hire her and to take her home to teach us how to deal with our families, spouses, and the children? Exactly.
These strategies are good
Working.
for all ages.
For all ages, inshallah. Tell me, and the final one, when these foundations are in place, what kinds of young people do we begin to see?
We see children who exceed even our expectations. We see children who are kind, empathetic, help strangers, make meaningful contributions to the world around them, are super smart, are motivated, are interested in contributing to their world, whether it is at school, whether it is at home, whether it is helping a neighbor. We see these children become teenagers who can then deal with peer pressure, who can then cope better with mental health, who can cope with stress, who can cope with the demands placed on them if they're going to matric or university. And we see adults who are well-grounded, who have spiritual grounding, who have emotional regulation, who have book smart, so they have their academic. And essentially, when Allah says, what is our purpose here on earth? What is our purpose? Is it just to make money? Is it just to rush through life? There has to be a greater purpose. And when we raise children who are resilient, who are caring, who are present and aware, because we were those things with our children, I think we then come closer to living in a way that Allah wants us to. And that is really important.
That's so important. Just
being a representative of Allah's qualities.
True. Rounding up, quick one.
I think your children, we all say our children are manna to us. But your children are really a gift. And they're only little for so long. So take the time, take 5 minutes out of your day to just love them, to just be interested in their world, to just help them, because they need you the most when they're little. And as they grow, those needs change. So make the most of it while they're little.
Well, Jazakallah so much for that. Wow, we can go on and time just flies. Well, if you are a high school, or if you are a principal, an educator, or even a learner who topped it, when I mean topped it, you never get all A's, but you passed your matric exams. Radio Lansar School Matters with me, Sumaya Khan. We are hosting our annual event honoring our grade 12, our class of 2025 matric achievers. So if you do not know about this, you can contact me on 083 600 8746 and let us know if you will be attending. Well, we have the KZN MEC of Education, the spokesperson of KZN of Education, district director, department officials, and over 30 schools have confirmed. This is an invite only if you RSVP and you give your name. No walk-ins through the door. Well, as we wrap up tonight's conversation, we're reminded of learning truly does, begin long before a child opens a book or steps into a classroom. When children feel heard, regulated, and understood, earning becomes lighter. Learning becomes even more lighter. And earning as an adult becomes the best feeling. And they naturally show up when it comes to being out there in the world, and they become someone capable. So thank you, Jazakallah, so much to our guest, Raisa Sheikh, for sharing such practical, compassionate insight into the emotional and communication foundations children need in order to thrive at school. To our parents and educators listening in, small everyday moments of connections, listening, and reassurance can make a powerful difference in a child's readiness to learn. You've been listening to School Matters with me, Sumaya Khan, on Radio Al Ansar. Until next time, may we contribute and continue to guide our children and the Ummah with patience, understanding, and hope. Assalamu alaikum.
You are listening